Position English, communication in English.
Hello everyone, we are Flora, Angelin, and Jing-Jing. We are here today to bring you a presentation about Toni Morrison's Beloved. Toni Morrison once said, "We are people, not aliens. We live, we love, and we die." From this quote, we can know she cares about marginalized groups a lot. She was born in Kentucky, but her grandfather, who was a carpenter and farmer, decided to move the whole family from Kentucky to Ohio to avoid racism and poverty. Despite being raised in Northern America, she is deeply influenced by her Southern roots. She read a lot of stories from her grandparents that were about post-Reconstruction South. As for education, she got a bachelor's degree in English from Howard University. 2 years later, got a master's degree from Cornell University. After 10 years of teaching, Toni starts to write and serve as the editor at Random House. During this period, she got divorced and have to take care of her 2 sons by her own. She completes her first novel, The Bluest Eye, in 1968, published Beloved in 1987, particularly focused on the topic of slavery. And she won Pulitzer Prize for Beloved in 1988. In 1993, she became the first Black woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. Now we have Angelin for a plot summary.
Hello everyone, I'm Angelin. I'm here to give you the plot summary. Before we dive into the novel, there are 2 things you need to know. First is this is a horror story set in the period after American Civil War. And the second is the most important part. It is about slavery. First, I have to talk about the 2 important settings throughout the entire novel. That is Sweet Home and House of 124. On the left, Sweet Home is a slave-holding plantation in Kentucky. Plantation is a big farm, and it is not sweet at all. Because slaves who work here wanted to escape from here. As for House of 124, it is a house haunted by the ghost, so this is where the horror part begins in the story. Next, let me briefly introduce the main characters before the plot. The first one is Seth. She is the protagonist of the novel. She used to be a slave from Sweet Home, and she is an independent woman who is extremely devoted to her children. Beloved. She is the ghost. Beloved is actually a mysterious character, but we are not going to talk about it. We are going to talk about it later. Beloved is Seth's 3rd child and oldest daughter who was killed at the age of 2. And the next one is Denver, Seth's youngest child. She is quiet, sensitive, and independent, but also craves attention and love from Seth and Beloved. And next is Haley Sucks, Seth's husband, when Seth was 13, she arrived at Sweet Home. Among the 5 male slaves, she chose Haley as her husband. But you don't have to remember him that much. And the next one is Paul D., a former slave from Sweet Home like Seth. He is Seth's lover when they living in House 124 after escaping from Sweet Home. Now we're going to begin our story. Beloved is not written chronologically. It consists of flashbacks, so the story begins in 1873 in Cincinnati, Ohio. It is after Seth escaped from Sweet Home, and Seth and her daughter Denver live in 124 Bluestone Road. The house has been haunted for years by a ghost. That ghost is Seth's eldest daughter, Beloved. For the story, I break it into 3 parts. In part 1, from chapter 1 to 18, there are a lot of things happening in these chapters. so I put a few important things in this part on the slides. First, after escaping from Sweet Home, Seth gave birth to Denver with the help of a white girl named Amy Denver. So that's why Seth named her third child Denver out of appreciation. Second, in the middle, Poldy tells Seth about why Haley, which is Seth's husband, didn't meet Seth during the escape as they planned. Poldy said that Haley was shattered after seeing school teacher, which is their owner, and his nephews abused Seth, so Haley didn't show up at the end. After her escape, school teacher, which is her owner, also the owner of Sweet Home, came to take her and her children back to Sweet Home, and Seth didn't want her child to suffer from a tough life as a slave like her, so she tried to murder all of her children. But she didn't succeed. However, she only killed her 2-year-old daughter by cutting her throat, and Seth got caught and ended up in jail. And the dead child was buried, having one word on her tombstone named Beloved. So that's why the ghost named Beloved. For part 2, it is from chapter 19 to 25. Another former slave named Stampede told Poldy about Seth's crime, which was killing her own child and being sent to jail. And then Poldy can't handle the fact that Seth is a murderer, so he leaves Seth. Then Stampede feels guilty afterward. With chapter 20, a series of stream of consciousness monologues begins. Seth wants to explain everything to Beloved. She wants Beloved to understand why her own mother kills her. Followed by Denver's monologue in chapter 21, and Beloved's monologue in chapter 22. Finally, in chapter 23, the three women's voices come together, expressing their hopes, fears, and love for one another. For part 3, chapter 26 to 28, as Beloved constantly demands Seth's attention and love, Seth begins to take Beloved as the center of her life. So Denver decides to reach out to find help and get a job to be a household for the Baldwins. One day, when Mr. Baldwin arrives at house 124, Seth saw it. And however, the arrival of Mr. Baldwin triggers a flashback in Seth's mind to the day school teacher came to catch her. And Seth couldn't get rid of those nightmares, so Seth went crazy, trying to use the weapons in her hand to kill Mr. Baldwin. And at the same time, Beloved disappeared during the chaos, like she never existed. And this is the end of the story. And now let's have Jing-Jing for analysis.
Hi, I'm Jing-Jing. I'm here to give you the analysis of the story. For analysis, we'll first look at a quote that Morrison put at the very beginning of the story. It's a quote from the Bible, and it gives reader the direction of the story, suggesting that the theme of this book is related to struggles with identity and the legacy of slavery. I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. Romans chapter 9, verses 25. This quote means that the author will deem people who are not her family as her family, and love people who were not loved before, for they share the same memory or the same fate. The first symbol is the address. In the story, Seth and her daughter Denver live at 124 Bluestone Road in Cincinnati, Ohio, and there are some possible explanations for why Morrison chose this number. The first reason is because of the missing 3. The sequential order for numbers should be 1, 2, 3, 4, but here the 3 is missing because it's suggesting that the third child, the older daughter Beloved, is missing from the family or is killed. Another symbolic meaning for this number choice is also suggesting that the third child is missing, because if you add up 1 and 2 and 4, you'll get 7, which is also the letter count for the name beloved. And in Christian tradition, 7 represents charity, grace, completion, and perfection. Since beloved is missing, this number indicates that this family is incomplete after beloved's death, or the mind of each family member is to some degree imperfect, affected after beloved's death. The third symbol for this number is the process. Seth was alone when she arrived at Sweet Home, which stands for 1, and later she married another slave named Haley, which means 2, and then Seth gave birth to 4 children. So the number 124 represents the process. But the most important symbol about this number is the missing 3. Beloved is missing, and in a sense that ghost in the house. And the next symbol is about characters. Beloved, Denver, and Paul D are 3 characters that symbolize 3 different time periods. Beloved represents the past, Denver represents the present, and Paul D signifies the future. So in the story, when Paul D promises a new life with Seth, and beloved come back in the form of ghost, actually means that the past memory of slavery continue to haunt Seth when she tried to move on with her life. And for Denver has never lived as a slave, but she suffers almost as much as her mother, which suggests that slavery goes beyond physical dimension. It's a scar that keeps passing down through generations, and it's making it hard for Black people to love themselves. In a broader sense, these time symbols can be interpreted as the haunting legacies of slavery. Through the concept of ghost, Morrison tried to say that the impact of slavery continued to affect not just the once enslaved individual, but the entire Black community, their offspring both physically and mentally. As for Paul D, he represents the future, the hope for the future, which explains why in the end beloved disappeared while Paul D has to stay. The other is hoping that and trying to tell people that the past is the past. They need to let go of the burdens and find freedoms because there is a brighter future and new challenges for them to face. Another crucial symbol of the book is its dedication. The character beloved represents not only the spirits of the third child, but also the collective spirits, memories of all the enslaved African Americans, or people affected by slavery. Morrison dedicated the book to 60 million and more, but this is just a symbolic count for Black people who died in the Atlantic slave trade or American Civil War. Because the impact of slavery is more than the people who experience it, so the book is dedicated to every victim of slavery and any descendants or family that were affected by the trauma of slavery. And this dedication again emphasizes the essence of the story. The trauma of slavery is a haunting force. And now let's have Flora for more analysis.
The last 2 significant symbols are choke cherry tree and tin tobacco box. The choke cherry tree is a symbol of the scar on Seth's back. Choke cherry tree is a cherry tree that has beautiful blossoms, but the fruits are extremely bitter. Choke cherry tree is also an image of scars built upon scars, and eventually becomes the image of a tree. Scars represent suffering, and trees symbolize life. It represents both life and suffering. As for Paul D's tin tobacco box, it's a box that Paul D brings with him every day, but he never opened it. Because Paul D was a former slave, he didn't treat it well by his owner. The box symbolized Paul D's horrible past that he doesn't want to talk about. Let's move on to Kahoot. Now it's Kahoot time.
What does the choke cherry tree symbolize in the story? Beloved abolitionist Harriet Tubman's life. Horrible past. A dystopian society. Suffering and life. Suffering and life. What does the ghost of beloved symbolize in the story? The haunting legacy of slavery and unresolved trauma. The beauty and brutality of nature. A sanctuary for healing and connection away from past traumas. The years of slavery endured by the characters. The haunting legacy of slavery and unresolved trauma. Why did Seeth kill Beloved? She did not want her daughter to suffer from slavery like her. As an act of revenge against her husband Hallie. She wanted to protect her from a disease. She believed it would break a curse placed upon her. She did not want her daughter to suffer from slavery like her. Where did Seeth and other slaves escape from at first? A barn. House of 124. Police department. Sweet home. Sweet home. What does the street number in the address 124, Bluestone Road suggest? There are 124 slaves in the sweet home. Seeth's birthday. The third child, Beloved, is missing. Beloved's age. The third child, Beloved, is missing. According to the novel Beloved, the legacy of slavery is a haunting force. All of the above. Liberating experience. Joyful memory. Haunting force. Beloved symbolized not only the spirit of the third child, but also all of the above. Morrison's own fear. All of Denver's dreams. The collective spirit of all the enslaved African American. The collective spirit of all the enslaved African American.
And that's all for our presentation.
I'm Flora.
I'm Angelin.
I'm Jing-Jing.
See you.
Language is power when you use it. English and Applied Communication,世新University.